The alien hall was filled with laughter. The high lords of the empire sat on shining thrones, their golden robes heavy with power. They looked down at the galaxy like it was a game board, and every living being was only a piece to move and break. One of the lords raised his clawed hand and said, "Let us play a joke. A cruel joke. The human race thinks they are strong. Let us show them they are only toys." From the shadows, servants brought forward a girl. She was tall, proud, and dressed in silver silk. Her crown was small but sharp, her eyes burning with pride. She was the princess of the empire, the daughter of a mighty king. But tonight she was not treated as royalty. She was treated as a tool. The lords laughed and said, "Send her to a human. Not to a king, not to a warrior, but to a poor man. Let us see how long she lasts. Let us see how long before she runs back in tears." The decision was final. The princess fought, shouted, and cursed them, but no one listened. She was placed inside a shining pod and sent across the stars. The engines roared, and the laughter of the lords echoed even after the pod was gone. To them, this was just a game. To her, it felt like a death sentence. Far away, on a quiet planet, a human farmer lived alone. His name was Daniel. He was not rich, not strong, and not powerful. His home was small, made of wood and stone. His fields were rough and half dead. He worked with his hands, breaking the earth, hoping for a little food to survive another season. He did not know that his life was about to change forever. On that night, Daniel heard a strange sound above his farm. It was like thunder mixed with fire. He ran outside and saw a pod falling from the sky, burning as it crashed into the ground. The earth shook and smoke covered the air. Daniel, afraid but curious, grabbed a lantern and walked closer. Slowly, the pod opened. From the smoke, a figure stepped out. It was the princess. Her dress, though torn, still shone in the dim light. Her crown glimmered faintly. She stood tall, proud, and angry. Daniel stared, unable to believe what he was seeing. She looked at him with sharp eyes and said, "So this is it. This is where they send me. A dirt farm. A small man. A joke." Daniel was confused. He had never seen such a being before. He did not know her language, but somehow the pod gave her words in human speech. He asked carefully, "Are you hurt?" The princess laughed bitterly. "Hurt? They think sending me here will break me. They think living with you will shame me. Do not think you own me, human. I am no gift." Daniel did not know what to say. He was not a soldier, not a leader. He was just a farmer with little food and a small roof. Still, he saw the fire in her eyes, the way her hands shook, though she tried to hide it. He understood one thing: she was alone. "Come inside," Daniel said quietly. "The night is cold." The princess looked around. The stars above seemed endless, and the wind cut sharp against her skin. She hated the idea of stepping into a human's small house, but her pride fought against her hunger and her fear. Finally, without a word, she followed him. Inside the house, Daniel lit a small fire. The warmth filled the room. He placed a bowl of soup in front of her. The princess stared at it like it was poison. "You expect me to eat this?" she asked with disdain. "It is all I have," Daniel replied simply. She turned her head away, refusing. But later, when he slept, she found herself staring at the bowl again. Her stomach growled. She hated herself for it, yet she lifted the spoon. The taste was plain, simple, nothing like the rich feasts of the empire. But it was warm. It was real. She ate in silence, her pride shaking. Outside, the night was calm. But far away in the empire's halls, the lords laughed again. "Let us see," they whispered. "How long before the joke is over?" Daniel did not know what kind of storm had been placed in his house, and the princess did not yet know that this joke would change the fate of both their worlds. Morning light crept through the cracks of the farmer's wooden house. Daniel woke early, as always, to tend to the weak crops outside. The sound of a door creaking behind him reminded him that he was no longer alone. The alien princess stepped into the light. Her silver dress was now dusty, her crown bent slightly from the fall. Yet her eyes still carried the fire of pride, as if the entire galaxy should bow before her. She looked around with disdain. The wooden walls, the rough table, the dirt floor, all of it offended her royal sense. "Is this what you call a home?" she asked sharply. Daniel wiped his hands on his worn shirt and gave a simple answer. "It keeps out the rain." The princess scoffed. "My chambers were larger than this entire field. My servants would have fainted to see such poverty." She stood with her chin high, her voice filled with scorn. Yet Daniel only nodded, calm and quiet. "It is not much," he admitted, "but it is what I have. You can leave if you wish." Those words cut deeper than she expected. Leave go where? The Empire had thrown her here as a joke. No ship waited, no servants followed, no soldiers guarded her. Pride demanded she not show weakness, but in her heart fear stirred. For the first time in her life, she was truly alone. That day, she refused to help him with his work. Daniel carried buckets of water, lifted stones, and mended broken fences while she sat on a rock, her arms crossed. She told herself she was above such labor, but as hours passed, she watched the human closely. His back bent with work, his hands rough from years of toil, yet he never complained. He did not curse her presence. He did not demand anything from her. He simply worked as if her scorn meant nothing. When evening came, Daniel set another bowl of soup before her. She glared at it. "I do not eat the food of slaves," she said coldly. Daniel did not argue. He ate his own portion quietly and went to rest. The fire crackled softly in the corner. Hours passed. The smell of the soup lingered. The princess's stomach growled. Her pride told her to resist, but her body betrayed her. Finally, with a trembling hand, she took the spoon and ate in silence. As the days stretched on, her pride battled her hunger, her loneliness, and her curiosity. At first, she refused to touch the farm tools. But one morning, Daniel found her watching him intently. Without speaking, he placed a smaller tool near her and walked away. For a long time, she stared at it, her pride burning. But then, slowly, she picked it up. Her first attempt was clumsy. Her hands blistered quickly and she cursed under her breath. Still, Daniel did not mock her. He only showed her the correct way, patient and steady. Something inside her shifted. She had been raised in a palace where everything was handed to her. Yet here, every meal came from sweat, every roof beam from hard work. She hated that she admired it. She hated that this simple man did not fear her, did not bow, did not beg for her favor. He treated her not as a princess, but as equal. At night, she lay awake staring at the wooden ceiling. She thought of the Empire's laughter, of the lords who sent her here to be humiliated. They expected her to cry, to crawl back broken. Instead, here she was, learning to use her hands, tasting food made by a poor farmer. The thought was both terrifying and strangely comforting. One evening, after a long day in the fields, she finally spoke with a softer tone. "Why do you not bow before me? Do you not know who I am?" Daniel looked at her with calm eyes. "I know you are someone who has lost as much as I have. A crown does not change that." His words left her speechless. No one had ever spoken to her like that. For a moment her pride cracked, showing the lonely girl inside. But quickly she lifted her chin again. "Careful, human," she said, though her voice lacked its usual sharpness. "I am still a princess." Daniel gave a small smile. "And I am still a farmer. Tomorrow we work again." That night, as she secretly ate her soup once more, the princess felt something she had not known for years: confusion. Was this simple human breaking her pride, or was he showing her a strength the Empire never had? Far across the stars, the alien lords waited for news. They imagined her broken, begging to be taken back. But if they had seen her now, covered in dust with a tool in her hand, they would not have laughed. They would have feared, because the joke they planned was slowly turning into something else. Something dangerous, something powerful. Days turned into weeks on the lonely farm. The princess, once proud and untouchable, now woke at dawn beside the crackling fire of a poor human's home. At first she had hated every sound of the wooden floor, every smell of the simple food, every rough task that left her soft hands blistered. But something unexpected was happening. Her heart was beginning to change. Daniel worked as always, quiet and steady. He never forced her to help, but the tools were always there, waiting. At first, she picked them up out of pride, to prove she could do what he did. Soon, however, she found herself wanting to work beside him. The rows of earth they dug together began to look less like scars in the dirt and more like new beginnings. She started asking questions. "Why do you live here, far from your kind?" she asked one evening, sweat glistening on her brow. Daniel shrugged. "I lost my family. This land is all I have left. It is quiet here." The princess was silent for a moment. In her empire, weakness was never spoken aloud. Loss was hidden, pain was buried. Yet here the human admitted it simply, without shame. She felt something stir in her chest, something she had not felt before. Respect. At night, while the fire warmed the small house, Daniel told her human stories. He spoke of his childhood, of running through fields with his brothers, of nights when his mother sang under the stars. His voice was soft, filled with a pain that never fully healed. The princess listened quietly. For the first time in her life, she realized how little she knew of ordinary lives. Her own childhood had been filled with silk, jewels, and lessons in ruling. But never love. Never the warmth of simple joy. Slowly, laughter began to echo in the house. The first time Daniel made a small joke about her crown slipping when she swung a tool, she glared at him. But then, against her will, a laugh escaped her lips. It was sharp at first, awkward, like a sound she had forgotten how to make. But as the days went on, her laughter grew warmer, freer. She hated that she enjoyed it, and yet she could not stop. The bond between them grew, fragile but strong. When she stumbled while carrying water, he caught her arm. For a brief second, their eyes met and her heart beat faster than she wanted to admit. When he cut his hand on a tool, she tore a strip of her once royal dress to bind the wound. She told herself it was nothing, but inside she felt the strange ache of care. But the galaxy was not blind. Rumors began to spread beyond the farm. Spies whispered in shadowy halls, telling alien lords that the princess was still alive. Not only alive, but living with a human. At first the lords laughed. Impossible. She would never lower herself. But when the reports continued, their laughter faded into silence. Something was happening they had not planned. Something dangerous. One evening, as the sun bled red across the sky, the princess stood by Daniel's side in the fields. Her once silver dress was now patched and stained with earth. Her crown no longer shone, but she did not care. For the first time, she felt free. She turned to Daniel and asked quietly, "Do you ever feel like the stars are laughing at us?" Daniel looked up, his eyes reflecting the fading light. "Maybe," he said. "But maybe they're watching to see if we surprise them." Those words lingered in her heart. She lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying his voice in her mind. A human farmer, so small compared to her empire, yet somehow larger than all of them in spirit. Far away, however, decisions were being made. The empire could not allow this joke to turn into a threat. They sent soldiers to see with their own eyes what had become of their lost princess. The day they arrived, Daniel was repairing a fence while the princess carried a bucket of water. The sound of heavy boots crushed the soil. She froze. Her heart pounded as armored figures stepped into the field. Their weapons glimmered, their eyes cold. "Princess," one of them said, bowing slightly, though the bow carried no respect. "We were told you were alive, but this? Living like a servant? With a human?" Daniel stood beside her, silent but firm. The soldiers smirked, waiting for her to beg to be taken home. Instead, the princess lifted her chin. Her voice was steady, sharp as steel. "I stay here by choice." The soldiers stared, shocked. Daniel's heart raced at her words. She had chosen. But what did that mean for them? As the soldiers turned away, muttering darkly, the princess whispered so only Daniel could hear. "They will not stop. And there is something you must know." Her voice trembled for the first time. Daniel looked at her, confused. She took a breath, her eyes locking with his. "I carry your child." The world seemed to freeze. The farm was silent, the stars hidden behind clouds, the air heavy. Daniel could not speak. The princess's pride, her anger, her laughter, all of it now carried a secret that could shake the galaxy. The news spread like fire. The alien empire had sent soldiers to watch the princess, but what they found left them shaken. She was not weak. She was not broken. She was not begging to be taken back. Instead, she stood proudly beside a human farmer, her dress torn by labor, her crown bent, yet her spirit unbroken. Even worse, she had declared she stayed by choice. The report reached the alien lords. Their laughter turned to silence. Their game was slipping from their hands. A joke had become a danger. "If the galaxy believes the princess has chosen a human, it will disgrace us," one lord hissed. "It will make humans look strong," another snarled. "Bring her back. If she resists, punish both. Crush the human, break her pride, and remind the stars who rules." Back on the farm, the air was heavy after the soldiers left. Daniel tried to return to his work, but his hands shook. The princess's words echoed in his mind. "I carry your child." He could barely believe it. Him, a poor farmer, now tied forever to an alien princess and the empire itself. That night she sat by the fire, her face half in shadow. For once her voice lacked sharpness. "You must hate me for this," she whispered. Daniel stared into the flames. "Hate you? No, but I fear what it means. The Empire will not forgive this. She nodded slowly. Her pride was still there, but something softer had replaced much of it. I do not regret it, she said firmly. They sent me here as a joke, but in this place I found more life than in all the palaces of my people. Her eyes flicked to his, and now a life grows inside me. A future neither of us expected. Before Daniel could answer, the sound of engines thundered in the sky. He rushed outside, his heart sinking. 3 massive ships descended, shaking the ground as they landed near the fields. Armored soldiers marched out in rows, their weapons gleaming under the moonlight. The princess stepped forward, her back straight, her face calm but pale. The commander approached, his voice booming. Princess, you have dishonored your bloodline. You will return with us at once. His eyes narrowed at Daniel. As for the human, he will be erased. His life means nothing. Daniel stood still, fear tightening his chest, but he did not move away. He stayed by her side. The princess's heart raced. She had never been more terrified. Yet she stepped forward and shouted, No! I stay here. I choose this life. Gasps rippled through the soldiers. Never in history had a royal defied the Empire so openly. The commander sneered. Do not be foolish. You are an heir of the throne. You belong to the Empire, not to this dirt-eater. The princess raised her voice, strong and clear. You sent me here as a joke. You thought I would suffer. But here I found freedom. Here I found more honor than in all your halls of gold. This human has given me what your empire never could. Respect. The commander's eyes flashed with fury. He signaled his men to step forward. If you will not come willingly, then we take you by force. Blasters hummed, aimed at Daniel. His heart pounded, but he stood firm. The princess stepped in front of him, her arms outstretched. Touch him, and you will answer to me. I am still your princess, and I am carrying the blood of your empire. The soldiers froze. Murmurs spread through their ranks. The blood of the Empire? One whispered. Another lowered his weapon in shock. The commander's face twisted in disbelief. You lie, he spat. The princess's eyes blazed. Do I look like I am lying? The child I carry is half human, half royal. Kill me, and you kill the future of our bloodline. The silence that followed was heavy. Soldiers shifted uneasily. Some glanced at Daniel with something like fear. Others with awe. The commander clenched his fists, torn between obedience and fear of punishment. Finally, he barked, We will report this. But know this, princess, you are no longer safe. The Empire will not allow such shame to spread. They will come again and harder. With that, the soldiers retreated, their ships roaring back into the night sky. The farm was quiet once more, but the peace was shattered forever. Daniel exhaled shakily, turning to the princess. She looked pale but proud. Her hands trembled, yet her chin was high. You risked everything, Daniel whispered. She met his eyes, her voice steady. I did not risk it. I claimed it. This is my choice. But as she spoke, far across the galaxy, the alien lords raged. They would not let this humiliation stand. Armies were being prepared. Plans were being written. And soon, the little farm would become the center of a storm that could shake the stars. The night after the soldiers left was heavy with silence. The stars above the farm seemed dimmer, and the wind carried a cold warning. Daniel sat by the fire, staring into the flames, his mind restless. Across from him, the princess sat straight-backed, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Though she looked calm, her heart pounded. The secret she had spoken, her child, was now no longer just between her and Daniel. The Empire knew. And once the Empire knew, nothing could ever remain safe. For a while, neither spoke. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. They will come again, he said quietly. His voice carried no fear, only certainty. The princess nodded slowly. Yes, and next time they will not come with questions. They will come with chains, her words cut through him. He wanted to protect her, but he was only a farmer with old tools and a small house. How could he stand against the most powerful empire in the galaxy? Yet when he looked at her, tired, proud, yet brave, he felt something stir deep within him. He had no crown, no army, but he had a choice. He would not abandon her. But far away, spies were already moving. The Empire's commanders had sent shadow agents to watch from the skies. Small drones circled the farm, hidden in the clouds, recording everything. They captured her words, her swollen pride, her declaration that she carried a child of human blood. These images flew across the stars to the Empire's great halls. The lords raged when they saw. Their game had turned into disgrace. She dares claim a half-breed child? She dares turn our joke into a threat? One lord thundered, striking the table with his claw. Another hissed, "If this spreads, others may follow. If humans and royals can share blood, then what is to stop the rest of the galaxy from mixing? Our power will fracture. We cannot allow this." Plans were drawn. Punishment was written. The princess would be taken, locked away, perhaps even executed in secret. The child would never be allowed to be born, and the human erased. To the Empire, it was simple. Silence the secret before it became a revolution. Back on the farm, the princess could feel the danger pressing closer each day. She worked beside Daniel in the fields, but her eyes often searched the skies, expecting ships to return. Sometimes she paused, her hand resting on her stomach, and fear flickered across her face before she pushed it away. One evening, she spoke softly. "Do you regret it? That I am here? That this has happened?" Daniel looked at her, surprised. "No," he said firmly. "I do not regret a single thing, but I fear what they will do to you." She shook her head, her voice steady. "Let them come. I am not afraid to fight them. I will not let them take my child. I will not let them take you." Her words gave Daniel courage, though deep down, he knew a storm was coming. And it came sooner than expected. One night, while the farm lay in quiet darkness, shadows moved among the crops. Alien spies crept closer, their cloaks bending light around them. They carried devices, scanning the house, marking the walls with strange signs. One of them peered through the window and whispered into his communicator, "It is true." She grows heavier. The child is real. The princess woke suddenly, her instincts sharp. She felt the air shift, the same way she had felt danger in her palace. She rose, stepping outside, her eyes searching the dark. For a moment she thought she saw movement. A flicker of light, a shadow too quick. Then silence. The next morning, Daniel found strange marks on the soil near the barn. Not footprints, not human. His chest tightened. "They were here," he whispered. The princess's face hardened. "Then it has begun. The Empire watches us." From that day, tension filled every hour. Daniel worked the fields with one hand on his tool and one hand near a blade. The princess carried herself taller, sharper, her royal pride now a shield. But in her heart, she knew the spies had confirmed the secret. It would not be long before the Empire moved to end it. Across the stars, war councils were called. Ships were prepared, soldiers trained, orders sealed. The galaxy had not seen such urgency in years. But this was no ordinary matter. This was bloodline. This was honor. This was fear. On the farm, the princess stood with Daniel one evening, watching the horizon burn with sunset. Her voice was calm, but her words were heavy. "The secret is out. Soon we will not fight for a farm. We will fight for the child, for a future they fear." Daniel placed his hand gently over hers. "Then we fight." And in that moment, the fate of two worlds rested not in palaces or battle stations, but in the small house of a farmer and the heart of an alien princess who refused to bow. The sky above the farm no longer looked peaceful. Where once there were only stars and clouds, now dark shapes moved in silence. Warships hovered like shadows, their engines humming low, waiting for orders. The Empire had arrived. The joke they had once played had become a fire they could not control, and now they came to stamp it out before it burned brighter. Daniel and the princess stood in the fields, staring at the horizon. The air was heavy, the ground trembling from the weight of approaching armies. Soldiers poured out from the ships, their armor shining under the fading sun. Blasters in hand, they formed a wall of steel and fire. This was no test. This was war. The commander stepped forward, his voice booming. "Princess, you are under arrest. You have defied your bloodline, and you have shamed the Empire. You will come with us. The human will be erased. The child will never be allowed to exist." The word struck Daniel like a blade. He clenched his fists, ready to fight, though he knew he was only one man against many. The princess, however, stood tall, her crown bent, her dress torn, but her spirit blazing like fire. "You sent me here as a joke," she said, her voice sharp as steel. "You thought I would cry, that I would crawl back broken. But instead I found something your empire has never given me. Freedom. Honor. Love." She turned slightly toward Daniel, her eyes shining. "This human gave me more than all your palaces of gold. He gave me a choice." The soldiers shifted uneasily. Some glanced at each other, whispering. Her voice carried a weight they had not expected. But the commander sneered. "Your words are poison. You are blinded. You forget who you are." The princess's voice grew louder. "I have not forgotten. I am your princess. And as your princess, I tell you this, I will not return. I will not bow. This child will live. The commander raised his hand, signaling the troops to advance. Blasters hummed, ready to fire. Daniel stepped forward, his heart pounding. He had no armor, no weapon, only courage. If you want her, he said, his voice steady, you'll have to go through me. The soldiers laughed, but the commander's face twisted in rage. He admired the human's bravery, but he also hated it. Then you will die first, he hissed. Before the order could be given, something unexpected happened. Among the soldiers, a few lowered their weapons. One voice rose. She carries royal blood. If we kill her, we kill our own future. Another soldier nodded. The child is heir. Half alien, half human. If the Empire destroys them, we destroy our legacy. The commander shouted angrily, but doubt spread like cracks through stone. The princess's words had touched them. For years they had served lords who ruled with fear. But here was their own princess speaking with fire and truth. And beside her stood a human who refused to bow even in the face of death. The standoff grew tense. The army was divided, some ready to fight, others frozen in uncertainty. The princess knew this was her moment. She stepped forward, her hand resting on her stomach. Her voice carried across the fields. You fear shame, you fear weakness, but what you truly fear is change. This child is proof that humans and aliens can be one. This child is proof that the Empire cannot chain the stars forever. You cannot erase me. You cannot erase us. The silence that followed was deep. The soldiers looked at her not as a traitor, but as something greater, a leader. The commander, however, would not yield. His eyes burned with fury. If they will not obey, then I will end this myself. He raised his weapon, aiming directly at Daniel. The princess gasped, moving to shield him. But before the shot could fire, another soldier stepped forward, blocking the commander's aim. Enough, he said firmly. We follow her, not you. The commander's face twisted in disbelief. He looked around, but more soldiers were lowering their weapons. The Empire's iron grip was breaking, not through war, but through choice. Daniel stood frozen, unable to believe what he was seeing. The princess, however, lifted her chin, her voice strong. You came to drag me back. Instead, you have heard the truth. I am not leaving. I choose him. I choose this life. And I choose the child who will one day change the galaxy. The commander roared in rage, but his voice was drowned out by the silence of his own men. No one moved to follow his order. For the first time, the Empire's will was shaken by a single human and a defiant princess. That night, as the ships withdrew in silence, the farm lay quiet again, but nothing was the same. The war had not ended, it had only changed shape. The Empire would not forgive. They would return with more power, more anger. Yet something new had begun, a spark, a hope. The princess stood beside Daniel under the stars, her voice soft but certain. They wanted me to choose between crown and love. I choose you. I choose us. Daniel took her hand, his eyes lifting to the sky where warships still glimmered like shadows. Then whatever comes, we face it together. And above them, the stars no longer seemed cold. They seemed alive, as if waiting for the future to be written by the child that had already changed everything. The farm was quiet after the soldiers left, but the silence was not peace. It was the silence before a storm. Daniel and the princess knew the Empire would return, stronger than before. Yet for the moment they had won something greater than a battle. They had won a choice. The days passed slowly. The princess's strength began to waver as her body changed, carrying the child within her. She tried to hide her weakness, but Daniel noticed the way she held her stomach when she thought no one was watching, the way her steps slowed, the way her voice grew softer at night. For a woman once proud and untouchable, it was a strange and humbling thing. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in blood-red light, she sat by the fire, her face glowing in the warmth. Do you fear what comes? She asked Daniel quietly. He stared into the flames. Yes, he admitted. But I fear losing you more than I fear their armies. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Then you are stronger than all their generals. For they fear everything, but you fear only loss. Their bond grew deeper each day, no longer just survival, no longer just respect. It was something neither of them had expected. A love that crossed blood, race, and stars. Yet love did not erase danger. Spies still watched from the skies. Whispers still spread across the Empire, and the lords still plotted in anger. When the day of birth came, The skies above the farm were heavy with clouds. Rain fell, soft at first, then fierce, as if the heavens themselves knew history was being written. Daniel stayed by her side, holding her hand through every cry, every moment of pain. The princess, once too proud to show weakness, now clutched him tightly, her voice raw with both fear and strength. At last, a cry filled the small wooden house. Not the cry of war, but the cry of new life. A child had been born. Small, fragile, yet fierce in the sound of its first breath. Daniel held the baby carefully, his eyes wide with awe. The princess, sweat on her brow and tears in her eyes, looked at the child with a gaze softer than she had ever known. The baby's skin carried both tones, human and alien mixed. Its eyes glimmered strangely, reflecting light in a way neither of their races had seen before. The princess whispered, her voice trembling, "Our child, the first of both worlds." Daniel felt tears burn his eyes. He had lost so much in life, his family, his hope, his peace. But here, in this moment, he had gained something greater than all of it. A future. But they were not alone. Even as the baby's cries filled the room, ships descended once more from the skies. The Empire had come again, drawn by the whispers of spies. Soldiers surrounded the farm, their armor glinting in the stormlight. Yet this time they did not come with laughter or scorn. They came with hesitation. The commander from before stepped forward, his voice strained. "It is true, then. The child lives." The princess stood weak but unbroken, cradling the baby in her arms. Her voice shook but grew stronger with each word. "Yes, and you cannot kill what has already been born. This child carries royal blood. To harm it would be to destroy your own future." The soldiers looked at each other uneasily. Some lowered their weapons. Others bowed their heads. The commander clenched his fists, torn between orders and fear. Daniel stepped beside her, his voice steady. "You can call this shame. You can call this betrayal. But this child is proof. Proof that your empire cannot chain the stars forever. Proof that humans and aliens can share life." The baby cried louder, its small voice piercing through the storm. The sound silenced the soldiers more than any weapon could. For in that cry was something greater than fear, greater than power. It was hope. One by one, soldiers dropped to one knee. Not for Daniel. Not for the princess. But for the child. The commander's face twisted in rage, but even he did not fire. He knew the truth. If he struck, he would become the one who murdered the Empire's heir. The Empire could no longer laugh. What had begun as a cruel joke had turned into a legacy. That night, the ships left without battle. The farm stood unharmed. Daniel and the princess sat together in silence, the baby between them. The world outside was still dangerous, the Empire still burning with anger. But something had shifted. The future was no longer only in the hands of lords and kings. It was in the hands of a child who was both human and alien. The princess whispered to Daniel as she held the baby close. "They wanted to break me. Instead, they gave me you. And now they gave us this." Daniel kissed her forehead, his eyes on the child who had already changed the stars. "Then let them fear, for the future has already been born." And as the storm cleared, the stars above the farm seemed brighter than ever before. Watching, waiting, knowing the galaxy would never be the same again.